folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris once again. Ready, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Chris Wyatt Africa here in the Indaba Broadcasting Network for the Indaba Africa News of the Day. Today, May 15th, 2021. It's a Saturday. The weather is outstanding here in central Pennsylvania. Perfect weather for rugby today. That's right. Rugby Atlanta, the Rattlers will be playing today as well as many other teams. And tomorrow will be the DC, or the Washington, D.C., Old Glory, D.C. will be playing against the Seattle Seawolves. I'll be at that game, so the news of the day will not be on at the regular time. It will be much earlier tomorrow. I'll be doing the news broadcast probably around 7 a.m. my time, which will make it 1 p.m. in South Africa and 11 o'clock in the UK. So you can catch Indaba Africa News of the Day tomorrow early because I'll be doing journalistic coverage of the rugby game. Well, to the news and headlines from across Africa and around the world, ladies and gentlemen. 4,976 murders between January and March of 2021. The latest crime statistics are out for South Africa, and the numbers are once again harrowing. Massive spikes in KZN and elsewhere around the country led to a significant number. Nearly 5,000 South Africans murdered in reported murders between January and March of 2021. The average income per capita for South Africans in 2019 was $6,001 per person. Now, obviously, many people make more than that. Many people make less than that. But that's the average per capita income in 2019. Compare that with the $2.8 million that South Africa's top appointed political official gets, or $188,000 annual salary, in addition to perks and blue light escorts and all these other benefits that politicians get, ostensibly serving the people. Yet they make 31 times the GDP per capita. 31 times that top politician. To be fair, other politicians make a bit less than that. The opposition party leader, the head of the opposition party, gets 1.6 million, so significantly less. But the point is that these people make a lot of money on the back of taxpayers. South Africa's schools will receive trial effort for 3 new subjects this year. Those include new African languages, entrepreneurship, or should we say tenderpreneurship? This is, after all, the African National Congress-led Department of Primary or Basic Education. Going to teach kids about entrepreneurship. That's comical. Perhaps they teach them about how to destroy entrepreneurship with racist legislation and excessive taxation and pervasive corruption. Tenderpreneurship should be the subject taught in South African schools. That would be much more useful for aspiring corrupt tenderpreneurs. They'll also be teaching coding and robotics. Let me translate that into modern standard English, folks. Coding and robotics. That means how to use woke language properly. They'll teach you that in school. And how to repair traffic lights. New subjects in South Africa schools, trial basis coming to schools. South Africa's inept, corrupt, embarrassing parastatal, state-owned South African Airways in bankruptcy, but claiming to be a going concern once again, defying all logic and all accounting data. Bankrupt South African Airways with its tiny, antiquated fleet intends to take back to the air beginning in July or August. They don't even know when they're going to start, folks. They can't even tell you. It's July or August. 30 years of African National Congress-led malgovernance and malfeasance and pervasive corruption have done little to move the needle to improve the condition of South Africa's poor. And in fact, today there are tens of millions of more poor South Africans as a consequence of ANC misrule. We'll show you some aerial photography from an architectural firm that just shows you that situation. Now, to be fair, this was the case during apartheid. But the ANC, the party of liberation, has had 3 decades to right the ship. But instead, they spent $7+ billion buying unnecessary weapon systems so they could take corrupt tenders. We had members of parliament getting discounts on auto loans corruptly and going to jail for it. We've had in Kandla, the building of a mansion for a corrupt former president. We have had Oilgate, Travelgate, the list of corruption scandals, the money stolen from PPE equipment tenders throughout the pandemic. The list goes on and on and on of ANC corruption. All of that money could have been used to improve the condition of South Africans, either by opening up the marketplace, encouraging South Africans, creating small business loans and grants, or they could have simply provided proper education instead of the disastrous educational state that South Africa finds itself in 2021 after nearly 3 decades of ANC malfeasance. In Namibia, Namports, the state-owned company, is looking to deepen the Lüderitz port for exports of goods. And right now, the depth of the port is too shallow to allow heavier ships to come in and make larger shipments in and out, mostly out shipping out mineral resources to South Africa, among other places. And Katrina Mulilo, the capital of the Zambezi region, also known as the Caprivi Strip to many people for a long time, gets a new private hospital, or clinic, we should say, when you consider the size of it. Nigerians are very excited about the new Basketball Africa League and the chances for their team competing in Kigali starting tomorrow. And Malawi is planning to proceed with a 20-megawatt Golumuti solar project, thereby increasing the solar photovoltaic output potentially in Malawi by nearly 100%. Hunger stalks the Tigray region of Ethiopia after 6 months of open conflict. And Bloomberg's op-ed board finds Hamas's military strategy to be somewhat puzzling in its conflict with Israel. China has successfully landed its Zhurong rover on the surface of Mars. Congratulations to the Chinese Communist Party, proving that even communists can accomplish things from now and then. They've landed their rover after a 3-month orbit around Mars, looking at the landing site and being cautious about their approach. The 7 minutes descent of hell they successfully negotiated. So China's rover is now on the surface of Mars, competing with NASA's rover for attention. Ireland's healthcare system is the latest publicly disclosed victim of ransomware. On Friday, Ireland's healthcare system was attacked by hackers, and they put malware or ransomware there, seeking the Irish health system to pay the extortion money. And the Biden administration has redefined when Easter occurs. Amongst the holiest of days for the Christian community worldwide, Easter is celebrating the resurrection of Christ. It is in March, apparently. According to Biden officials, it was in March this year. And that explains the abysmal jobs report that just came out with nearly 750,000 fewer jobs than expected. Unbelievable, folks. That is the situation in the Biden administration. Such inept, moronic, idiotic public officials that they actually have to screen comments before they allow the press to report on comments that officials give them. Well, folks, those are the headlines. Let's get into in-depth news and analysis of today's news on a Saturday, May 15th, 2021. You'll notice I didn't say Magashule once. Ace Magashule was not part of the news today. For once, a break from the ace. Let's see what happens next week, because you know he's going to be in the headlines each and every day as the week goes along. But here is the news. South Africa's crime statistics for the first 3 months of 2021. Everything you need to know. This is from Business Tech. The SAPs have published the latest crime stats that run from January through March. The police minister, Beckett Chile, pointed to an overall decline of nearly 9% in contact crimes, including assault, sexual offenses, common assault, and robbery, with only 2 criminal types of the category recording an increase, murder and attempted murder, which both rose by over 8%. He noted that 4,976 people were killed in the first 3 months, more people killed compared to the corresponding period in the previous financial year. The Mpumalanga province recorded the same number of murders as the corresponding period. However, it's concerning the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal provinces recorded double-digit increases in murders at 21.5% and 16.9% respectively. Grievous bodily harm cases totaled 2,855. The Gauteng and Western Cape provinces recorded the highest assault cases, 16,528 instances of assault, and common and grievous bodily harm were domestic related, which means the victims and perpetrators knew each other. Ladies and gentlemen, the gangster state that is Beckett Chile, South Africa, continues. Very dangerous place to live, unfortunately. Such a beautiful country with such amazing people and such tremendous potential, retarded by corrupt, inept politicians and uncaring, underfunded, poorly trained, and poorly resourced police services. Well, speaking of overfunding, how about the salaries of those top political officials in South Africa, ladies and gentlemen? Let's take a look at that. Here's how much South Africa's ministers and other top government officials will get paid this year. Ramaphosa has approved the salaries. This is published on May 14th, along with his recommendations. There will be no increment in their remuneration. So there were no pay increases. So deputy president, ministers and deputy ministers. The deputy president gets 2.8 million rand. The minister gets 2.4 million. And the deputy minister gets 1.9 million rand. Speaker of the National Assembly, 2.8 million rand. And then we work our way down to the chief whip from the majority party gets 1.6 million. And the leader of the opposition gets 1.6 million rand. I find it puzzling that a government would pay the salaries of politicians. Now, it's based on their position. I get that. Same thing happens here in the U.S. The Speaker of the House gets a higher remuneration than a regular member of the House of Representatives. I get that. But, wow. Lots of money there, folks. Lots of money. Let's talk about schools and trial programs for new academic subjects in South Africa schools, including new African languages. Yes, let's talk about this, folks. This is interesting. So, 3 subjects to be tried in the 2021-2022 school year. New African languages. The department indicated that we'll be introducing previously marginalized African languages at schools. The process of incrementally refocusing the teaching and learning of the previously marginalized African language in South African schools has led to the introduction of Kiswahili as a second additional language in grades 4 through 12 in 90 schools. Hold the presses. Stop the phones from ringing. Excuse me? A previously marginalized African language? What planet are these idiots from? Kiswahili is the national language of Tanzania and has been since independence. It's also widely spoken and taught in Kenya, in Rwanda, in Uganda. How in the world is Kiswahili a previously marginalized African language? It's not a South African language. It's an alien language. It's a colonial language, a consequence of Arab traders mixing with Bantu tribes on the Swahili coast of East Africa and developing this language of African origin with massive Arabic influence and other language influences like Portuguese, German, and English also have affected the Kiswahili language. What an utter bunch of nonsense. Previously disadvantaged languages? I mean, I would buy the story if you're going to talk about maybe some of the languages spoken by the San peoples of the Kalahari. That would be a previously disadvantaged language, one that was not promoted or taught in public schools. Got it. You could maybe even make the argument that Tswana or Venda or even Siswati is disadvantaged because the relatively small number of speakers and it's not spoken widely when maybe it should be taught in other parts of the country. But to say that Kiswahili is a previously marginalized African language, what kind of morons are these people? What kind of idiots? They don't even know anything about it. It's not even a South African language. Thousands of miles from where Swahili comes from to the shores of South Africa. And these people run educational services. You gotta wonder what the heck is going on in their heads. And entrepreneurship. South African schools will be teaching entrepreneurship. This is how you cozy up to a corrupt ANC member. And this is how you draft your fake bid with your non-existent company so that you too can get a tender to deliver textbooks to the Eastern Cape so that kids remain illiterate, stupid, and then we get their votes by handing out money to them. So here's how you do the tenderpreneurship. Seriously? Teaching entrepreneurship. South Africa is hardly the country to teach entrepreneurship by the government. Maybe private schools. Yeah, I'll buy that. But the government teaching entrepreneurship, 540 schools will be monitored for implementing compulsory entrepreneurship. Oh, it's compulsory. It's not even an option. President Ramaphosa has previously emphasized the importance of South Africans embracing a culture of entrepreneurship as the country aims to attract $1 trillion investment over the next 5 years. Cyril Ramaphosa, entrepreneurship. Yeah, okay. So this is how it works, okay? Let me help you out. Okay, so I am in a labor union leader, and because I'm the only one that can string 2 sentences together, I become the key negotiator at CODESA, the Convention for Democratic South Africa, thereby elevating my rather unimportant self to rather prominence after leading a few useless strikes during the apartheid era. So now I'm elevated and popular and well-known, and Madiba wants me as his deputy president. But others realize that I'm a clueless buffoon. And really, they don't want me in politics because they actually want the country to have a good start in life. And so they negotiate and they move and they outmaneuver, and Thabo Mbeki, the technocrat, becomes the deputy president, along, of course, with F.W. de Klerk in the initial stages of the new republic. And Cyril Ramaphosa, rather than scream about how he's been cheated, he's bought off. Here's a little equity from this company. Here's a little equity from this company. Here's a little equity from this company. And Cyril Ramaphosa considers that to be entrepreneurial. You know, you can't make up a comedy hour about this. Trevor Noah, where are you at? You want to be funny? This is the topic. This is the topic. Well, in addition to entrepreneurship, or tenderpreneurship as I prefer to call it, the schools will be teaching coding and robotics. 54 schools will be monitored for piloting and implementing the coding and robotics program from grade R to grade 9. You're going to teach coding to kids at grade R? That seems a little bit odd. And robotics? Are we fixing traffic signals? Sorry, I can't help you be sarcastic on this situation. So, South African Airways intends to resume flights starting in July or August for its antiquated, inept, inefficient, and tiny fleet of just 9 or 12 aircraft, down from 43 in recent years. And all of their newest aircraft, which didn't belong to the airline, they were under wet lease, like the A350, which is a fantastic aircraft for South Africa's needs for regional and international travel. Poof, gone. No longer with South African Airways. Looking for a white knight savior to rescue this corrupt patronage facility has been so far unsuccessful, although the government assures us they will find a white knight to save SAA. Right. So why do you need another 819 million rand to bail out SAA's subsidiary Mango, which can't even pay its landing fees to the airports company South Africa, another government-owned entity which pretends to be a private enterprise? It's not. AXA is a parastatal. 30 years of ANC governance, and this is what we still see. South Africa is an ever-evolving, dynamic country, which over the recent years has seen the emergence of landmarks that have achieved global recognition. In Cape Town, there's a distinctive elevation of Heatherwick Studios' Zeitz Museum of Contemporary Art Africa. Well, who cares about that? Here's what we really care about that. Look at the spatial patterns of people living in lovely, leafy suburbs next to disastrous, poorly served, informal settlements. There you have it, folks. Here's another one right there. This one here is Johannesburg. Yep, look at that. 30 years. Nowhere is this division more apparent than the busy metropolis that is Johannesburg, the country's largest municipal economy. It was founded as a mining town, yada, yada. Anyway, today is South Africa's economic hub. Its population is supplemented by people drawn to it from other South African cities and migrants from all over Africa. While black people were pushed to the south of the city to townships, white miner owners built mansions that turned into the rich suburbs that exist in Johannesburg today. Oftentimes, this inequality is visible in the very literal sense, such as the suburb of Primrose, juxtaposed with the adjacent informal settlement of Makauza. Black families are less likely to live in middle-class suburbs, and the number of black people who live in formerly white suburbs remains low. Indeed, it does. But contrary to the lies of the economic freedom fighters and the African National Congress, it's not because of white monopoly capital. It's not because of racial inequality. It is not because of white South Africans. It is because of the African National Congress. That's why. 30 years, and this is what we have. Millions more South Africans living in abject poverty than did under apartheid. Frightening thought. In Namibia, ladies and gentlemen, Namports, a state-owned company, is looking at dredging at the port for Luderitz. The small former German settlement on the coast of Namibia is a big export location for mineral resources that go particularly to South Africa. Absolutely. Something that needs to be taken a look at very carefully here. They've said that currently 30,000 tons of manganese are loaded at Luderitz and transported to South Africa, where it's exported to destination markets. That's because they can't put the large ships in there. They have to send it to South Africa. So they're handling about 700,000 tons of manganese per year. They've looked at optimizing the current infrastructure they have in terms of optimization plans. They're confident that once they've implemented them, they can increase the handling of manganese. And once the port is actually dredged and taken to a deeper depth, up to 2 million tons annually can be shipped out of Luderitz. Right now, the port has a rather shallow depth of less than 9 meters, which prevents ships with a deep draft from coming in there. So this is an interesting development for Namibia and a potential boon for its economy. Mineral resources, maybe even some economic growth for the sleepy, neglected, remote settlement of Luderitz, named after a German trader. Additionally, in Namibia, there is a new clinic, described as a hospital, but I would call it a clinic, located in the Zambezi district, in the capital Zambezi district. It is formerly known as the Caprivi Strip, or the Caprivi Zipfel, as Germans, named after the former German foreign minister. Katima gets a new private hospital. State-of-the-art private hospital is the answer to many patients' needs in Katima Mulilo, who are always referred to facilities hundreds, if not thousands, of kilometers away. In order to get proper care, a lot of these people had to go to Rundu, which is located in northern Namibia, 500 kilometers away, or Windhoek, the capital, at over 1,200 kilometers away. And that was not an ideal situation. The new private hospital adds to the available healthcare services in the region and indeed to the country as a whole. Go a long way to serving travelers and locals alike. As a gateway to Namibia from the northeast, Katima Mulilo requires services such as those that the private hospital is offering. There you go. It has a capacity of just 14 beds, a maternity suite, a theater, an intensive care unit, a pharmacy, outpatient department, diagnostic imaging, computer tomography, or CT scan, a sonar, and a mammography, and also provides ambulances with a staff of 33. 33, 14 beds. Like I said, more a clinic than a hospital, but nonetheless, in that remote region of Namibia, that is a welcome addition to the healthcare sector and will help many people out. Meanwhile, Nigerians apparently are very excited about Basketball Africa League, which was delayed last year courtesy of the pandemic and has gone from a full season played all over the continent to just a single tournament played in Kigali, Rwanda, with a dozen teams from all over Africa, including Nigeria. That's right, folks. Folks in Nigeria are very excited about this basketball league. The Nigerian basketball fans are preparing to cheer on the national team, the Rivers Hoopers, as they face off Sunday in Kigali against Rwanda's Patriots in the first game of the Basketball Africa League. The Nigerian team includes 3 former NBA players, Chris Daniel, Ben Uzos, and Sullivan Valdez. This looks to be quite exciting. I believe the boys have what it takes. I feel they'll excel. We stand positive. We stand with our country. This is Chibukuye Nakoya. Pledge support for the team. There you go. He's a basketball fan. And the Basketball Africa League is an interesting development for Africa, and we'll see where it goes from here, ladies and gentlemen. Meanwhile, in Malawi, a solar photovoltaic project to be constructed by a Chinese firm, surprise, surprise, could add as much as 20 megawatts of solar photovoltaic capacity to Malawi's grid, which is heavily dependent on hydroelectric power and imported power. The Golomoti solar plant is expected to come online by the end of 2021. The plant will be used to provide grid stability and reduce national dependence on diesel and hydroelectric generation. It's about 100 kilometers southeast of Lilongwe, and it'll be connected to the adjacent substation. With a population of approximately 19 million people, Malawi, the landlocked nation, has a power generation capacity of around 363 megawatts, around 90% of which comes from hydropower. Access to power in Malawi's rural areas is currently at only 4% and only 42% in urban areas. Overall, electricity access is just 11% throughout the country, and the government aims to increase that figure to 30% by 2030. While I appreciate the government of Malawi's efforts to increase electrification in Malawi, just getting to 30%, 9 years from now, that's disappointing. Power Africa, where are you? USAID. Step forward and help Malawians, the warm heart of Africa, get electrification. 89% of Malawians have no electricity. 89%. Does that shock you? It should. It should disturb you. And that has nothing to do with colonialism. That has nothing to do with white capital, white monopoly capital, racism, or anything like that. It has everything to do with governance and the lack of wealth in Malawi and lack of interest by international investors. Meanwhile, hunger stalks Tigray in Ethiopia. 6 months into the conflict, the northern region of Tigray is facing widespread hunger and starvation as military operations and violence stall aid delivery and threaten the approaching planting season. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, or the OCHA, last week described the scale of food insecurity as large and dire, and Wednesday said that 5.2 million of the region's roughly 6 million people needed food assistance. With military and rebels blocking relief supplies from getting in, this is a tragic situation which is wholly unnecessary. Wholly unnecessary. Ethiopia's war with Tigray is unnecessary, unwarranted, and quite a stain on the region, and quite a disaster for those who live in Tigray. Meanwhile, Bloomberg Media, their op-ed board, has written an op-ed piece which appears in Bloomberg, of course, but here I've brought it from Business Day, a South African newspaper, and they express surprise at Hamas's military strategy in attacking Israel. And they rightly point out that Hamas doesn't have a legitimate strategy. They're simply looking to tarnish Israel based on the Israelis' reaction to their attacks. It's worked for them before. As Bloomberg points out, this strategy has worked for them previously on a couple of occasions. According to the exiled political leader, Hamas's war strategy, if that's a proper term for raining hundreds of randomly fired rockets on Israel, is working. In a televised address on Tuesday evening, Ismail Haniyeh called the barrage a victory and an honor for our people. And he's brain dead, clearly. Rhetoric is not unusual. Hamas always claims to win the wars it loses. In 2012, after suffering a humiliating defeat to Israel, a popular perfume appeared in the shop in Gaza named for the Hamas missile that reached Tel Aviv. The shop owner said it commemorated a military victory that left much of Gaza in shambles. Yikes. Hamas is clearly hoping to leverage the images of Israel's counterattack in Gaza against its adversary after the fighting stops. This, too, follows a pattern. Following the war in 2008 and 2009, the United Nations Human Rights Council formed a special commission to study war crimes on both sides. Hamas and Israel were both found to have committed atrocities, a penalty that means nothing to a terrorist organization. Hamas lost the military battle, but won it a public relations war to further delegitimize Israel. But it's not working this time, ladies and gentlemen. It's not working this time. After the Trump administration brought several Arab neighboring states to the peace table and agreed to peace terms with Israel, they have been restrained in their rhetoric and not come out with the typical pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas support. Now, Morocco is sending 40 tons of emergency supplies to Palestinians, but that can't be seen as support for Hamas's terrorist actions. The Hamas may have overplayed their hand this time, but that does not mean that Israel will not come under scrutiny. Meanwhile, the Chinese Communist Party, congratulations to the Chi-Coms for the successful landing of their Zhundong rover on the surface of Mars after 3 months orbiting the planet and being very circumspect and careful about where they landed. They've actually landed on the surface of Mars yesterday. China successfully landed a rover on Mars, state media says. China successfully landed its rover on Mars, according to state media, becoming the second country in history to have a rover on the red planet. The Zhurong, named after the god of fire in Chinese mythology, landed Saturday morning at the pre-selected area in Utopia Planitia, according to the state-run Xinjiao news agency. Six-wheeled solar-powered Zhurong rover weighs 240 kilos, or 529 pounds, carries 6 scientific instruments, and will later be deployed from the lander for a 3-month mission in search of signs of evidence of ancient life on Mars. Now, won't that be interesting? Now, of course, this was put into orbit by a Long March 5 rocket last year, and it's been circling the red planet since it arrived there. For 3 months, it's now been circling the planet. Will it be interesting to see if NASA or the Chinese are the first to unveil evidence of past life on the red planet? And the race is on, ladies and gentlemen. The race is on. Ireland is the latest victim acknowledged publicly to be attacked by hackers with ransomware. The Irish healthcare system has come under attack. Ireland's healthcare system was hit by a major ransomware attack on Friday, forcing its health services to shut down its IT systems and locking many hospitals out of their computers in what one government minister said was possibly the most serious cyber attack in the country's history. The ransomware attack began overnight, targeting Ireland's health service executive, which said it had decided to shut down most of its IT systems. Now, make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake, this is an act of war. Not simply extortion, not simply racketeering, not simply theft. This is an act of war. An attack on IT systems, power grids, is an act of war. Shutting down that system may very well have cost someone their life, as medical professionals aren't able to access computers that they need to perform the things they need to perform, to issue prescriptions, to issue tests, to get the results of tests. These are acts of war, and those responsible for them should be prosecuted as terrorists. Not simply criminals, not random criminals, but as terrorists, because their intent is to damage national security. Either that or, unlawful combatants. Maybe that's a better term than terrorists. Unlawful combatants, because they make themselves unlawful combatants by attacking the national welfare of a state and its sovereignty. And that's what this is. Well, folks, you may have missed it, but this year, Easter wasn't in April. Traditionally, Easter is held in April of each year to celebrate the resurrection of Christ. After being crucified, Christ purportedly rose from the grave and came back to life before he left this planet. And Easter is among the holiest of holidays for the Christian community, the largest religion on the planet. Well, folks, the Biden administration has determined that Easter apparently is not in April. It's in March. Did you know that? I missed that entirely. I was out collecting Easter eggs in April, not in March. So apparently I'm behind the times. But the woke, highly intelligent, highly qualified, obviously picked for her skills and not any other reason, advisor on the Biden administration claims that Easter was in March to explain why employment numbers are low. President Biden's economic advisor mistakenly said Easter was in the month of March in 2021, arguing it was the reason why unemployment numbers were worse than expected. I think Easter happened in March this year. The seasonal adjustments were a little funny within the labor report. White House Chair of Council of Economic Advisors Cecilia Rouse said Easter was on April 4th, by the way, folks. Rouse appeared at a White House press briefing Friday to discuss the latest discouraging economic numbers. Well, with people like this advising the Manchurian cadaver on economic affairs, it's little surprise that our economy is cratering. There are gas lines a la 1978-79 under James Earl Carter, the worst president in the 20th century in the United States. And now we've returned to these times. We have gone from a country with record low unemployment, wealth disparity declining, record income in black families, record employment amongst every non-majority group except for women, but it was also a near record high. But for blacks, Hispanics, Asians, we saw academic scores increase. We saw trade increase. We saw our trade deficits decline. Government spending was still out of control, but that's a whole different story. We saw the rebirth of America's military before it suddenly became woke and told the story about their inspiration from their two mommies. All of this under the previous president. And now, within less than 4 months, this country has fallen off the rails under an inept, incompetent, unrepentant racist president who virtue signals and stumbles over his every words. Wow. Unbelievable, folks. And now we find out that Easter is actually in March. Well, thank you, the White House economic advisor. Please bring Larry Kudlow back. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the news and headlines on Africa and around the world today, as well as in-depth and insightful analysis and commentary from Chris Wyatt Africa here on the Indaba Africa News Today. Thanks for tuning in today, Saturday, May 15th, 21. I appreciate your time, your patronage, and your patience for the restart on this stream, because Streamlabs OBS stole my microphone. We'll catch you here next time on Indaba Africa News of the Day. Remember, tomorrow, Sunday the 16th of May, will not be at the normal time of noon Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. South Africa or Central African Time. It will be earlier in the morning, probably at 7 a.m. or 1300 in Africa, as I am on the road tomorrow for rugby coverage of Oh Glory DC. Thank you for your time, your patience. God bless, and have a lovely day.